I'm Josh Liston from On the Bubble podcast, an oral history of television fandom, part of the Gonna Geek network, just like the show you're checking out now. Shows on the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other awesome geeky shows at GonnaGeekNetwork.com.
You are listening to the Starling Tribune, a podcast dedicated to the Arrow TV show.
I am the Green Arrow.
The Green Arrow has entered through the front door.
This podcast is not produced or maintained by the CW, Warner Brothers Television, CTV, or DC Comics. All characters, situations, and stories are the properties of Time Warner. I am the Oracle, and this is your Tribune.
Oh, sorry. I was watching the last scenes from Crisis on Infinite Earths. Welcome back to Earth Prime's favorite newspaper, the Starling Tribune, now recovering from a visit from John Jones. I'm the chief editor, SP, and your other award-winning reporters, the only reporters to make it all the way through Crisis on Infinite Earths for this special episode number 261 of the Starling Tribune are Chris.
In a contest of mind over muscle, mind wins every time.
Okay, Rebecca. And Michelle.
If we're going down, we go down fighting.
Always, Sarah. Always go down fighting. What a great... this is just too many quotes. We'll have to talk about it later. Hey, everyone. This podcast is recorded on Thursday, January 16, 2020, live on www.geeks.live.
That's right. And this evening, we'll be discussing Crisis on Infinite Earths parts 4 and 5. And since we've finished the run now, that means we might accidentally talk about some other stuff in correlation, but the primary focus, episodes 4 and 5 of Crisis on Infinite Earths, and any news, articles, announcements that have dropped in the last week that could, and let's be honest, would impact future episodes of everything set on Earth Prime. So that means Arrow, Flash, Supergirl, Legends of Tomorrow, and Black Lightning, because we're on one Earth now, baby.
If you're new to the show, thank you for searching us out on the internet and joining us. After the show, you can check out our content at GonnaGeek.com, where you can also find other geeky videos, podcasts, and articles.
Thanks, guys. It's been a fun week. Michelle, why don't you go ahead and break down the double episodes that we watched this week?
Sure thing. We're going to start with part 4, which is technically Arrow Season 8, Episode 8. It aired Tuesday, January 14th, 2020. It was directed by Glenn Winter. Credits include 1 Stargirl, 9 Arrow, 2 Titans, 1 Doom Patrol, 10 Supergirl, 5 Flash, 2 Legends, and 12 episodes of Smallville. Written by Mark Guggenheim. Credits include 19 episodes of Arrow and 10 Legends. And Marv Wolfman has numbered character created by credits. He was also involved in a comic book called Crisis on Infinite Earths. Like, why would they get this guy to also write this episode? Why? And then part 5, which is technically Legends of Tomorrow, Season 5, Episode 0. It also aired Tuesday, January 14th. It was directed by Gregory Smith. Credits include 6 episodes of Legends, 3 Riverdale, 4 Flash, 7 Arrow, and 1 Supergirl. Written by Kido Shimizu. Credits include 15 episodes of Legends, 11 Arrow, and 1 Flash. And Ubay Mohabed. Credits include 6 episodes of Legends and 1 Arrow.
Couple things. First of all, I have to slip in at this point in time because it's relevant since we were talking about the credits. The writer, Mark Guggenheim of Crisis on Infinite Earths Part 4, also happened to write the Green Arrow, or the Green Lantern movie. Yes, the 2011 Green Lantern movie. That is important later. And Marv Wolfman, the man, actually has an acting credit now.
Indeed.
We'll talk about that later, too. We're going to talk about some ratings, though, right away, because, well, that's what we do. And we're going to talk about the Arrow episode first that aired on Tuesday, the 14th of January, 2020, Crisis on Infinite Earths Part 4, to a live rating of 1.41. Honestly, it should have been a lot more. And we'll get into why later, because everybody that didn't see it live didn't get the awesome, immediate effect that Chris and I got along the way. Following the episode of Arrow and Crisis was a special episode of Legends of Tomorrow. Let's just call it what it is. They should have, if they could have made a show for a episode called the CW Universe or Arrowverse or whatever. They should have, but they didn't. They called it Legends of Tomorrow, and it was episode 0, and it had a live rating of 1.35. I'm not quite sure why it had to drop off. Maybe the kids had to get to sleep or something like that, but I thought it should have gone up, and the ending was great. So what do you guys think about the ratings? We talk about the ratings every week, and this week is no exception. So what do you guys think of the ratings, Michelle?
As we talked about in last episode when we discussed part 3, these are going to get an easy 1 million bump from the DVR. Also, I really don't know if they include, we all know that they don't include the app. And then there are other ways of watching this. They probably don't include that. So there might be like another million that way, like through the app and then through other various, methods. So in the end, it might end up getting, a good like 3 million, 3.5.
Especially with the cameo that was in the first episode. As soon as that happened and that hit the social media, I swear a lot of people must have come just crumbling in saying, what is going on here? This is phenomenal. It was also phenomenal because you had Oliver's death, part 2. So we'll go and we'll talk about the overall themes for the episode. We'll link the overall themes to the episode names. So, Chris, I'm going to ask you once again, do you know how to do maths?
Math? Only sometimes.
Okay. So did you get the name of the crossovers or not?
Crisis on Infinite Earths. Right? Earth.
That's right. So if it's infinite, why did we only have 5 episodes?
Because they could only contain so much crisis and so much TV.
There's only so much drama you can take. I get that. So Michelle, what do you got for us?
Well, let's see. Part 1, part 2, part 3. I can also math. So we get part 4 and 5. Part 4. I know.
I thought it was 5 and 6 we got.
I know. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry, Chris. I didn't mean to break your heart.
So sad.
Part 4, we got the big wrap up. And part 5 is basically Welcome to Earth Prime, which we're going to talk about, of course.
Can we subtitle that Welcome to Earth Prime with the Super Friends? Because that's basically what we've got is the Super Friends.
I know. Let's not jump the gun. I don't want to jump the gun. In fact, I want to start our discussion basically where part 3 ended with our heroes in the vanishing point. And at the beginning of part 4, we start there. Of course, months later, we can tell because Ryan's got a beard, because as we all know, beard growth is a number one way to show passage of time.
Just ask Admiral Adama.
That's a BSG reference or Battlestar Galactica reference for anybody that didn't get it.
And our heroes are, they're having a tough time because they've been there for months. Ryan and Lex are working on a device to teleport them somewhere. Of course, another thing that's been bothering them is Barry's just been gone. Barry just ran and they're like, we don't know where he is. And then we get that moment where they're like, Ryan and Lex are like, okay, we have to test this. And John Jones is like, I'll do it. And then Kara is like, Lex, thank you for volunteering. Chris, yeah, what did you think of that?
She's kind of a little crappy towards him, understandably, because she killed her alternate Earth cousin by rewriting the Book of Destiny, and he died in her arms. And then you see her morosely walking around carrying shredded cape in her arms. And let's also factor in the fact that Kara has never trusted Lex Luthor from Earth 38, or I think I got the Earth number right there. Whichever Earth their number is, because he's basically made her and Kal-El's life hell. So, yeah, I like that she automatically volunteered him for the potentially deadly event because he's the only one in her mind that they can risk because she's not going to care if he dies.
And then SP, what did we get during that test?
So it didn't quite work out as well as they thought. You got a little shocked right back at them. So yeah, the device that they were building with Rune Vanishing Point tech really didn't work. So they had to think of another way forward. Also, I just have to add, it was a long time that we had to wait in the cleaning closet of the Vanishing Point because we were trying not to get noticed. The Paragons thought that they were the 7 people that made it all the way through. 3 of us were in the cleaning closet the entire time. And don't worry, nobody went into the cleaning closet. Nobody tried to pick up the Vanishing Point, so we were safe in there. It was just a long time in there, just the 3 of us.
It's a rather large closet. We were actually quite comfortable. And, sometimes the Paragons, they would leave a mess, and then all of a sudden it would be gone for them. And so they didn't have to worry much about anything.
They thought it was magic.
Didn't want to get in the way of Lex Luthor, though. That man, he's got an attitude to him.
He's cranky.
Yeah.
He's a douche. Anyway, that word was used in the episode. So there you go. It's canon. We get Barry back because of this little this teleporter thing. And Barry is just like, wait a minute, I just left. Like, what do you mean you've been here for months? LOL.
Right. Typical Speed Force shenanigans ruining things for Barry.
And in typical Barry fashion, he didn't stop. He ran into a wall in order to stop and, crashed and toppled over things and everything. And everybody's like glad that he's there. But like, what happened, dude? Why can't you help us? That sort of thing. And there's no multiverse. So the Speed Force technically doesn't exist. So it's a little problem for them that they have to figure out.
Well, that's not how the Speed Force works. You don't have to have a multiverse to have a Speed Force.
Well, that's what they were insinuating. Like Barry was working through it in his mind, and he was like, so there is nothing there, so I can't go into the Speed Force. And that was a problem. But somebody took care of it for him.
It's also because effectively the Speed Force is the magical, mystical mumbo jumbo when they need to do something on the Arrowverse shows. Similar to magic and other properties. Where like, if we don't know how to do it, we'll use magic to explain it. They've kind of used the Speed Force to do that. And I'm totally okay with that, by the way. I'm not dogging on it because that's exactly what they do in the comics too, is big, the Speed Force will solve this. And you're like, what does the Speed Force have to do with getting hot dogs or some ridiculous thing that they somehow make the Speed Force solve?
You got to use the Speed Force carefully when you're making hot dogs because you don't want them. Guys, can you see me?
I can see you. Correct. Oh,
yeah, you're there.
Okay.
Because you don't want to age the hot dogs too much within the Speed Force because they could, wilt and, go rotten and that sort of thing. And you don't want them to explode. You don't want them to cook too fast. And you don't want to not go far enough because then they're still frozen, or worse yet, they're still living.
Well, hot dogs aside, we learned that while the Speed Force, Barry got a little trapped in it, we realized that it is indeed an answer because we get Spectred Oliver Queen arriving. Very serious, very, I don't know how to describe it. It's like he just sees everything. When you see that little training part, it's like he sees everything. Alongside
Echoey voice, and again, not dogging here, did anyone else have a little bit of a hard time hearing him at first until you adjusted to it? It's similar to what they did with the Monitor, where sometimes I had difficulty understanding what he was saying just because of the echoey booming effect they did on it. I understand why they did it. I'm fine with it. But it took me a second there. I was literally processing what I was hearing in my head again to understand it sometimes.
It wasn't as bad as Bane was, in the Batman movie, but it was more difficult. And it's not what we're used to hearing from Stephen Amell as he's playing Oliver. So if he would have been like the Monitor, right? I've seen the Monitor doing other roles before, but his voice in this was definitely different. It was a lot of reverb and it was pronounced more. So yeah, they did when Pariah was that way too. So any of the super people turned out that way.
And we learn indeed that the Speed Force is the answer. And with a little boop on the forehead, Barry's complete potential is unlocked. And then we get Oliver saying, "Run, Barry, run."
Yes, that was fun. My question I had for you guys is his potential still unlocked when it's all said and done? Because I seemed to think it was based off a later conversation he had with Sarah. So presumably Barry's at his fastest now and most in tune with the Speed Force as we move forward, which could have interesting implications.
I like Barry's reaction. Wait a minute. I don't think how that works. I don't think everything's unlocked yet. I just don't. What happened? You know, that sort of thing. It was pretty fun.
But hey, it's a magical boop. And he takes everyone. They're in the Speed Force. They're going to go to when 10,000 years ago, when the Monitor, did the science experiment gone wrong, because that's how a lot of these things happen. The science experiment goes wrong. Kara, Lex, and Ryan make it. But the rest of them basically get hit by the Anti-Monitor and they get trapped in the Speed Force. And then we get, again, Spectre, Sage, Ollie telling Barry, you got to find us. You got to think about the times that we won, we defeated, and the bonds were forged. And that's how we got a trip down memory lane, isn't it, SP?
It is. There's a lot of things that happen here. The most notable is this is where the vaunted crossover was, and probably the biggest crossover. I didn't think they were going to do it. I didn't think, not this specific crossover, but any crossover with the Justice League films, because you had Barry going back into different key points in his memory that he was with the others. I mean, the other crossovers were in there, was prevalent, as well as individual times that he had with his own Flash crew. But in this particular one, it took me a second. I'm like, no, they're not doing it. They're not. No. Oh my gosh. They did it. They did the thing. And Chris, I remember when I was watching it, we were both delayed a little bit at this point in time. And I has been 5-7 minutes in front of you or something like that.
Yeah. About
and I texted you. We were texting each other privately because we didn't want to spoil anybody. And I basically just texted you, OMG, I can't believe they did it, or something like that. You got to watch it. You wait till you get it and you're like, okay, what is it? And like 5 minutes later, I get the text back from you. The entire viewership was just aghast at what they did. And what I'm talking about here is Ezra Miller as the Flash from the Justice League films was in a scene with Grant Gustin, the Flash from the CW Arrowverse. They actually interacted, they touched each other, and it wasn't like they were in some sort of CGI mode or anything. They were actually acting back and forth as Barry Allen from different Earths. It was amazing. They've done everything else. I don't know what they left on the table. This was the biggest piece, though.
And arguably, our Flash, played by Grant Gustin, just gave Ezra Miller his superhero name because he's like, Flash. I like that, because if you remember, I don't think they've ever explicitly called him the Flash in Justice League or Batman v Superman, where he's introduced.
No.
Always called Barry, right?
Mm-hmm. So, because of crossing over in the Speed Force and being the Flash from the television universe, he now can call himself the Flash when it comes to the movies. So my real hope is, assuming we ever get this Flash movie that is on its 4th, maybe 5th director, there's been a lot of directors rotated through, do they reference back in that movie somehow where he decided to get his name from being the show? My guess is probably not, because it's 2020 as we record this, and the Flash movie is either 2022 or 2023 that it's slated for, so it's not exactly fresh in people's memories anymore, but it'd still be cool.
It's supposed to be 2022,
okay.
Which means they would have to start filming pretty soon, which means they'd have to have a script and a director and all that pretty soon. I mean, you can still go a little bit longer. I think one of the reasons why they did this was because they were trying to gen up interest in the fandom again and say, okay, look, this is a Flash. It's the same DC universe. It's the multiverse. It's just two different Flashes, the exact same Barry Allens. And we can have two Barry Allens because of the multiverse, which still exists at the end of this whole thing. And that's a point we'll have to talk about later, because I was confused on it for like a day. But they did the thing. They had the Flash crossover. Michelle, you have not spoken a little bit about this, and we really haven't talked to you. What did you feel like when you saw this on the screen the first time?
I enjoyed the banter the two had. They both were able to encompass that that endearing sort of goofy Barry Allen quality, that whole, is this cosplay? Are you a fan? Wait, your suit. And they just sort of, touching each other's suit. Wow, this is neat. Wow, this looks so comfortable. It was so Barry Allen. And it was there to remind the audience. It's like, yes, we're going to have this film, and our Barry Allen is going to be very similar. It's a different Barry Allen, but it's in that same boat. And you don't need to worry about us ruining Barry Allen and making him something that you're not completely familiar with. They are in the same boat.
Yeah.
And this opens up the door to a lot of things, because now the two entities, the Arrowverse and the whatever you want to call it, DCEU or Justice League films or whatever, they're connected now. And you can go back and forth between them, just like we've been going back and forth between the multiverse all along now. I don't think they're going to, for a lot of reasons, but just the possibility there now is very intriguing.
It was interesting, and we've been talking about this on the Discord that you can find at gonnageek.com/Discord. There's a Starling Tribune channel there. Sorry for the cheap plug, everyone. But we started discussing this crossover in there, and it actually came out in interviews, I want to say either late last night or early today with Mark Guggenheim, that this crossover scene with the two Barrys, it wasn't in the script originally, and it came after they'd finished post-production, pretty much all the filming and work on Crisis Part 4. And what happened is, folks at the DC Comics / Warner Brothers side of the house reached out to the CW team and said, hey, we want to do this crossover. Can you guys make it happen? And they flew Ezra Miller to Vancouver. They brought him on set and somehow kept it a secret, which they were really surprised about. They brought in the film crew from The Flash because this was an Arrow episode, and Arrow had already closed down set. They'd shut everything down, so they didn't have that crew. They filmed this, and then they inserted it in. And from what Mark Guggenheim had said on Twitter, they did not remove any full scenes from Crisis Part 4 and 5 to make it happen, but they did trim some existing scenes to get this in there. So it was very much a, hey, this is pretty popular. We should try and find a way to put the Flash from the movies in, versus the other way around that we'd always assumed, which is we always thought the TV show side would be like, we really want to get the movie-based version in here. And I kind of hinted at my thoughts on the Discord that it was an attempt to kind of give the movie version of Flash a bit more legitimacy or keep it fresh in people's minds, because we've seen Barry on screen in the movies twice now with Justice League and then a little bit in Batman v Superman. And his movie's not for another 2, potentially 3 years, depending on how things shake out with directors and scripts like that. So you could theoretically be talking about 4 or 5 years from when he was last seen in anything in costume as a superhero persona. So it's an interesting way to keep things fresh, but also cash in on the fact of something that I think I'd said on this show at one point in time of, I don't understand why they're doing another Flash movie, or rather doing a Flash movie when they've got this TV show where when people say Flash, they think of Grant Gustin. Well, now they kind of use Grant Gustin to further establish Ezra Miller, which is an interesting twist, because it's normally the movie side of the house that people think about first and go, oh yeah, TV, like the redheaded stepchild of movies, where it's not quite as good. And I would argue that what we got out of Crisis is somewhat better than some of the movies we've gotten there.
I just realized one of the things that the film Flash wants to explore is Flashpoint. And because of that moment, Brandon Routh, Superman is now canon and connected with the current DC cinematic universe. So in the Flashpoint, you can have 2 Supermans. You can have Cavill Superman and Brandon Superman in there because it's Flashpoint and because they're now connected. And I really want Brandon Routh to be Superman again. I'm sorry, Cavill, but I mean, oh gosh, that final shot where we see that he has his Earth back and he's able to look into the camera and fly away. I know I'm jumping the gun, but that was just.
Well, Henry Cavill has said he wants to do Superman again, but he's kind of busy having coins tossed at him right now because he's The Witcher, and they're just about to start season 2 of that, and it's a rather in-depth production. But not meaning to rain on the parade a little bit, but I think the current director for Flash had said yes, they want to do Flashpoint, but not really as in-depth as other things. So I'm afraid it's going to turn into something similar to what we got on TV, where it's sort of referenced and takes place during part of the movie, but really isn't a whole movie about it. I'm not getting warm fuzzies about their approach to Flashpoint.
I have many requirements, but I have one requirement that I'm going to levy on the Flash movie right now. If you all screw around with Sarah Diggle, I'm out of the movies forever. Don't screw around with Sarah Diggle. We've pined for Sarah Diggle for many, many years. We finally get her back. And if you take her away in Flashpoint in the DCEU, I'm not going to be happy.
Well, she might not even exist because her dad's too busy being a Green Lantern there.
Oh, well, I mean, she exists in this one. I mean, the Arrowverse. Don't screw around with the Arrowverse that much.
I don't think Flashpoint crossed Earths the way they presented it. It screwed up our Earth when they did it, but I don't know that it had an impact on the other Earths. I'd have to go back and rewatch, but certainly the comics really only dealt with Earth, whatever it is that they all exist on.
Anyway, I know we could gush about this for a long time. Eventually, Barry finds everybody, and of course the big fight happens, and the person really instrumental in taking charge, because Oliver's all Spectre, and he basically has died again because he has to sacrifice himself in order for a rebirth of the universe to happen. Sarah steps up. Sarah becomes the one everyone turns to, not any of the Supermans, not Batwoman. Here's Sarah Lance coordinating the fight against the Anti-Monitor, the one who is, getting everyone together, has that big speech at the end. She really was able to step up and just shine.
Well, and from a strategic standpoint, it kind of makes sense, because you go and look at most of these other folks that are there, they're used to working solo or with one or maybe two other people. Sarah's been leading a team. She's been the captain of the Wave Rider for years now at this point in time, dealing with the Legends who are, how do I put this best, difficult to handle at the best of times, and somewhat lacking in discipline, you could argue as well. And she's done a pretty damn good job of leading them, kind of pushing them in the right direction to fulfill the missions the Legends have been on. So it makes complete sense to me that she would be the one that steps up, because that's the life she's been living the past few years, is leading a misfit group of people to try and fulfill a mission and save everyone. And it's kind of a nice little homage and call out to some of the way it works in the DC comics at times, because you talk about like the Titans with Dick Grayson as Nightwing and Robin. He was always the leader because he had the mind for tactics, but also being the normal human. It's an interesting perspective to put the normal human in charge of all of these superhuman power, all these superhuman people with them. And they did a very similar thing here. So I kind of got a nice little vibe to Titans and some of those other team ups where you tend to find the non-powered but super badass human at the center of things.
Another factor in her favor is the character of Sarah Lance was in episode 1 of Arrow. And I don't think that really matters when it comes down to it, but she's basically the OG of the Arrowverse right now, because she's the only one left. Yeah, Diggle's around still, but he came later, and Sarah was there from literally day one with the Gambit. So yeah, I could see it from there. Also, I think I'm just looking at the rest of the people there in the Super Friends mode there, and I don't know if I want Barry leading the team. Barry's got a lot of heart, but he's determined time and time again that he needs somebody in his ear as he's out there doing this stuff, not exactly quarterbacking himself. His team quarterbacking his team himself. Yeah, he's the lead. He's the pointy tip of the spear, but he's not necessarily the team leader when the stuff happens, which is why you had multiple people quarterbacking during all these fights that were occurring in episode 5. So I don't think Barry was it.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think you necessarily want the super speedster to be the team leader, because a lot of what they do reacts on instinct and they is moving at a speed that the rest of the team generally is not. So it may not necessarily work out as well then.
I think Batwoman might be a little bit too new for the team to take over that leadership. I mean, she basically said, I was new girl last time. In the real Justice League, Batman is one of the leaders of the team, and we don't have Wonder Woman here. And Superman also, I mean, the whole thing of the CW verse to date has been to give Supergirl more of a lead role than Superman. Yes, we are going to have a Superman show now, but this time around, I think Sarah, it's shocked me, but thinking about it, she was the logical choice.
I agree.
And then that heart-to-heart moment with Barry about Oliver being the last tether to her time as just being Sarah, like with the Gambit. And we're, realizing, Oliver's gone. Her sister, this Earth's, Earth 1's gone. But Chris, you have a very interesting note in the notes.
Right. So she's saying all that, and I paused and went, did her mom die or something? Now, we haven't had Alex Kingston rather return in the role of, what was her character's name? Dinah Lance? Was that also a Dinah Lance? I can't remember. But she hasn't been on the show in seasons. But as far as we know, her mom is still alive. So,
and she was the one convinced that Sarah was still alive.
Right. So, oversight, or maybe it's just a matter of that Sarah, to the world at large, is still basically dead since she's traveling through time and pretty much disconnected from regular events. So her mother doesn't know that she lives, and
tell that to Ava, man. I mean, you don't get in between Sarah and Ava. Ava knows that Sarah's around.
Right. But so what I'm saying here, and what she's getting at, is that she doesn't really know anyone that remembers her as Sarah Lance, 18 years old, who goes on the Queen's Gambit with Oliver Queen before she's turned into an assassin, a superhero, a legend, things like that.
Wouldn't that be great, Chris, if they had you on the show as the long-lost high school classmate that still remembers her from pre-Gambit days?
I don't have the acting skills necessary for a CW show.
You trust me, you have the acting skills for a CW show.
At the end of part 4, we get basically our big fight done. Then part 5 happens, and we start with Supergirl, and she wakes up, and SP, she just thinks it's a regular day, right?
Oh, she is totally screwed up. She doesn't know where she is. She doesn't know if she was in a dream or not, which is very convenient that the first person she sees when she gets out of the house is Dreamer, so she talks to her about it to help her interpret her dreams or whatever. But yeah, she takes off her glasses, has the laser eyes go right away, has her sister in the flat. It's not really an apartment. It's more like a studio apartment, right? So a flat. She's in the flat, and Alex is trying to calm her down or whatever. And she is really messed up. She's like, what happened? This is not where I was a second ago. What was all this crossover, a dream or something like that? Because let's face it, we've had stuff like that happen before. Ultimately, what really gets her is that Lex Luthor is this renowned person that everybody loves and is winning basically the Nobel Peace Prize. It was the Nobel Peace Prize, right?
It was. He's good guy Lex. Everyone loves him. And I loved that as he's getting that, he kind of smirks and gives that wink to Carl. Like, I know that you know. You're a paragon. You remember these things. And I win.
Oh, he gave himself upgrades, in the fight. But he's not the good guy. Oh, no. He's the best guy. The best guy.
And he's your boss.
He's the boss. And they're like, but he's been your biggest champion. And so has Lena and Superman. He's just the bestest.
Well, and I do have to say, I loved how they did that reveal where as they're having that conversation, it then pans up and you see the DEO logo on the floor. And then below it, a subsidiary of Luthor Corp or something to that effect. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's pretty cool. That's a nice way to reveal the fact that Luthor's kind of like, yep, right here, you're under my thumb. I've got full control of everything you're involved in. Yeah, I run everything.
And the only people that know any different are the Paragons or whoever John Jones is able to restore their memories. Because, so it's a nice retcon that they've done. Not only have they, made everybody on one Earth, we still haven't discussed that, but now Lex Luthor is the nice guy. So he's not dead. He's out and about, and he's able, in my opinion, to be on any of the shows, but probably more like Supergirl or the new Superman shows. So we'll see where he turns up.
It's going to be interesting to see what they do with that, because I think they're sort of touching on like the President Lex storyline that they did in the Justice League cartoons and the comics, where Lex is seen as a good man who's protecting the United States. In that case, he's also the president and providing technologies and things like that. So I'm curious to see where they go with it, and I'm curious to see how he inevitably falls, because the thing that always happens with Lex Luthor is, as smart as he is and as much as he plans, he inevitably falls because he gets a bit cocky.
And I love the moment when they realize that they're on the same Earth. There's this event, and Supergirl says, like, I'll take care of it. I want to punch something. And it's Weather Witch from Flash. And before she can really do anything, the Flash shows up.
And everybody thinks it's just A-OK. And they're all like, wait a minute, you're on my Earth? What are you doing on my Earth? No, you're on my Earth.
Especially Marv Wolfman when he shows up for his autograph.
That was awesome. So Marv Wolfman, for those that don't know, we've talked about him at the top of the show, very steeped in the DC comics, and he actually gets this cameo interacting with Supergirl and the Flash. And what better way to have this guy on screen? It's kind of like a Stan Lee cameo over on the Marvel Universe, but it's Marv Wolfman.
Yeah, and then we learned that they've been doing crossovers and helping each other forever. And, you know, people have an apology tour or they have a comeback tour. John Jones decides to go on a let me give you the worst headache you've ever had in your life tour.
You thought your 21st birthday hangover was bad. Experience this.
I thought it was a normal day. John Jones comes along. Boop. Oh my gosh, there was a multiverse and we almost died.
Yeah, Brandon Routh did a really good job of kind of doing that stunned look and then that real blinking in the expression on his face as he tries to process everything, and then the typical Ray Palmer geeking out, there was a multiverse! It was delightful.
There was a super me!
Yeah, and then he does the pose, and I was like, yes!
And we didn't know we were going to get another Brandon Routh in the suit moment until later, but I think this was important. And it kind of screwed me up a little bit on the storyline, because with Ray Palmer's reaction to the multiverse, I thought that this Earth Prime, had never been in a multiverse. They never thought of a multiverse. Matter of fact, it wasn't part of physics, that sort of thing. So they just didn't know that there was a multiverse, and they had not interacted with anybody else, which still might be the case. So I thought this was it. This was the only Earth. We find out later that that's not the truth, and even with that I had a problem with, because I thought it was before Crisis that they were saying, but I've watched it several times, and there is a new multiverse basically that's going on now, and I had to confirm with several articles that I read later, so I'm not just speaking out of my mouth here. But it was an interesting moment when Ray Palmer was saying that, because I thought, okay, this is going to follow the comic Crisis that you guys have been talking to me about, and that there's only going to be one Earth, and this is it. There's one Earth. There's not going to be anything more. As it turns out, it's one Earth for the CW Arrowverse shows, but there are other Earths out there. And I think Ray's going to have fun trying to find out if there are other Earths out there, except for what? We have like 2 episodes of him left over on Legends or something like that.
Not a lot. But I think at this point in the show, it is fair to have made that conclusion for now that, oh, wow, they consolidated everything to one Earth. So maybe the fact that Ray, prior to getting his memory back, didn't know that there'd been a multiverse makes sense, because on Earth Prime, where everything consolidated here, they may not have ever explored the multiverse, which then leads to some head scratching of, well, we know our characters have had their memories refreshed to remember the shows as we remember them. What does the history of average Joe dude on the street seem like? If they have been doing things like, I don't know, the Dominators arc where they had Supergirl crossover from her Earth, and other elements where you've had characters from Earth 2 coming onto the Flash. How did they handle that? So it started making my brain hurt a lot as I was trying to figure out how they were logically handling some of the stuff that was retconned from a global perspective, but sort of restored for us to remember how it had gone prior to that retcon via John Jones' memory wipe. And I don't know if any of that makes sense, but it sort of does in my head.
And it's all of them. It's Supergirl, Batwoman, Superman, Black Lightning, The Flash, Arrow, all of them are on Earth Prime. Now, the CW is going to have Stargirl. She is on her own Earth
2.
Earth 2, which is a way of doing that. Before we talk about the different Earths, though, I do want to talk about like everybody getting the headache. Nash Wells got the headache and realized he was pariah, and oh my goodness, it is my fault, and thank you for cleaning up my mess. One of the things we got baby Sarah back, so yay. But Lila is just sitting on the couch, cuddling out with Diggle, and I'm wondering, did John Jones pay her a visit? Does she remember she was Harbinger?
I almost hope not. I hope not. And unfortunately, we see that Nash Wells did remember, and Tom Cavanaugh did a great job of like thinking, "Oh my God, what did I do?" Although they transition really quickly into he is going to help save the day along the way and still be a douche along the way too. I almost think they ruined the character of Nash Wells. Now, not necessarily Tom Cavanaugh, because Tom Cavanaugh has played a bunch of different Wells over the years on The Flash, and he's really been an integral part of The Flash. And I love Tom Cavanaugh's take on the different characters. But Nash Wells in particular, he had been like a douche most of the first part of the season, and then he becomes pariah and is really douche. And I don't know if Nash Wells is really redeemable or not. And before I leave Nash, I want to say one last thing. He seemed to have something going on with a new character over on The Flash, an intern basically on the newspaper or the website, the blog site. And I don't know what's going on between what their relationship is there. Also, we don't know about Earth 2, the old Earth 2. Is Jesse Quick still around? Is the other Wells still around? I mean, there's a lot of questions here that are going to have to come out in the series as they progress.
And I think that's part of how they set this up, is to do those reveals there. But going back to Lila and her memories, I hope for the sake of her and John as characters that she does, because could you imagine being John Diggle, remembering everything that happened, and then your wife doesn't, and you've got to try and keep that to yourself so that she doesn't know, or try and explain it and sound like a crazy person? I would hope that while it would suck for her to realize that she got superpowers and got played by the Anti-Monitor and controlled by the Anti-Monitor, I would almost hope that she does have her memories, so that the characters that we've known from Arrow up until Crisis are all on the same page still.
I'm wondering if Cisco, since he's Vibe again, will be able to remember.
Well,
because that's
he,
part
though?
of his...
Because that's the thing, when they remerged the Earths or whatnot, like, we know the Monitor had given him his powers back, but is that one of the things that happened in this newly formed Earth that was sparked by the Seven Paragons sending their thoughts and memories towards Oliver Queen as he was creating everything? So it's entirely possible he could have reverted back to not having superpowers. We'll probably find out here in the next week or so on Flash.
Yeah, if you are only watching Flash, and we've played this game before, I don't think you can play this game this time around. I think if you're watching one of the shows, you had to watch all of Crossover, because even Black Lightning was in more than one episode. But anyway, so you got people that are just casually watching Flash. They might have caught the Flash episode because their DVR caught it or something like that. They might have been a little confused. They come back in late January and they're like, what is going on with Cisco, because he wasn't Vibe, now he's Vibe, and now he's not Vibe again. I think they're going to have to explain things. They can't just bowl into them when the episodes restart. But on the other hand, we've seen what happened with Flashpoint. They might just glance over it within like 45 seconds and then move on. I have some concerns about what's happening. And on messages, I likened it to this. For those long-term viewers of sci-fi, you might have seen the Next Generation end of season 3, beginning of season 4 Star Trek episode called Best of Both Worlds, Part 1 and Part 2. After Part 2, which was the premiere episode of season 4, you had to have a strong episode that came back but wasn't hard-hitting. It was called Family, and Picard spent the majority of the time on Earth at his family's vineyard, and he was able to recover from being Locutus, which was he was made to be a bad character. So you can think of Pariah in this case, or Harbinger, and there's going to have to be a healing part. Not every show has the ability to make an episode of the magnitude of Family like it was on Next Generation after the mega event of Best of Both Worlds.
Right, and so I don't know that we'll necessarily get a full episode that's dedicated to Fallout, but I imagine for Flash and Supergirl and potentially even Legends, there'll be some Fallout of things. But we already know the next episode of Arrow, it's set in the future. It's the Canaries and Green Arrow, which, as we watch this, and we'll talk about what's coming up ahead, I went, oh man, I really wish next week's episode wasn't a flash forward to the future for the backdoor pilot, because there's so much stuff that came out of Crisis that I want to start trying to figure out what's happened, and instead we're jumping to 2040, and I don't know what else is going to happen. We'll probably get our resolution as to what this Laurel is that we have on Earth Prime now. Is she Earth 1 Laurel? Is she Earth 2 Laurel? A mix of them? That's going to be interesting to find out, but I almost wished that we had an episode of Arrow of some kind that dealt with fallout from Oliver's sacrifice again, because we see how gutted Team Arrow is when they realize Oliver's dead again, especially David Ramsey and Diggle, and you feel for him because he's like, this is the second time I haven't been there for him.
What? He did it to me twice. I felt for him there, and we railed against it the first time. You can't rail it against on the first time and not rail against it on the second time. Not having David Ramsey there for Oliver's second death, and I would argue more important death, because this is the death that everybody was expecting. This was the death of Oliver sacrificing himself to make sure that there was a new universe that was created, in this case a multiverse that was created, and Diggle wasn't there. And that's almost a disservice to Arrow fans, as much of a disservice as it was for Sarah Lance not seeing Quentin die or being able to talk to him last time, or even say anything in the scene when Quentin died. And yeah, I have a problem with it.
So my heart gets what you're saying. My head goes, I don't know how they would do it, though, unless they'd made Diggle one of the Paragons, because he effectively no longer existed at that point in time. So I don't know how you'd pull it off story-wise. I would have loved to have seen it, and it makes me more go, man, I wish he'd been there the first time.
Yeah, they needed to have done that the first time. Another thing I'm disappointed in, I didn't want to bring this up when we were talking about parts 1, 2, and 3, because I'm going, hold off, Michelle. There's 2 more hours. Maybe it'll happen. But it didn't, because there was no Wally at all.
So evidently he was in the Crisis comic that they did as a tie-in that you could buy at Walmart, and I think might be on Comixology now. And assuming I read correctly what I saw on Twitter, they killed him off in the comic.
Ouch.
They what?
Well, I mean, that's probably all undone at this point in time because everyone else died too. But assuming I understood correctly what was going on, they were showing stuff in the comics about them evacuating other Earths and things like that, and Wally was killed on one of the other Earths. If I read what I'm remembering correctly. If remembering what I read correctly.
If that's correct, it doesn't surprise me, because Quentin Lance, in his last Arrow episode that he was on, did say, I will see you again. So I expect to see Quentin in the last 2 episodes. Maybe the new universe has corrected the wrong of Quentin dying and he's back again. And I could see that with other characters as well. And yeah, we'll see what happens with again, I brought up Jesse Quick and the Wells from Earth 2. It applies to every single character. I think everybody is on the table except for Oliver, and I can't imagine them ending Arrow without a last goodbye to Oliver or something like that. And possibly the Wesley Shipp Flash, that's iffy for me. It's 50-50 whether they ever bring him back again or not.
I mean, it's possible that his Earth exists once again, because we get the clips at the end that start showing these other Earths. And Mark Guggenheim did say in an interview, for instance, the Smallville characters are back on their own Earth, things like that, even though they didn't explicitly show it. So there are presumably other Earths we haven't seen that could include those characters. My original thought when we saw this is they tried to take all of these Earths and merge them into Earth Prime somehow, and that
That's
seemed
what I
daunting.
thought, yeah.
And as I digested what I saw at the end of the show, I realized, oh, it's just the CW shows. And then Guggenheim confirmed that in an interview where he said, effectively, Earth Prime is Earth CW, but Earth Prime sounds better.
So we were all pining for the Superman cameos, the together cameos like Welling and Brandon Routh and Tyler Hawk and whoever else, right? We had the opportunity to have 3 Flashes and we missed it because Wesley Shipp died and whatever. Wouldn't it have been great to get 3 Flashes out of that?
Yeah, it'd been cool.
Yeah.
I almost want the Wesley Shipp Flash to remain dead because of the sacrifice that he made.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he made the sacrifice as well as Oliver in order to have all of this happen. I think it would make sense. Since we are airing our grievances.
Well, real quick before we go to that, in regards to John Wesley Shipp's Flash staying dead, it would also honor what was done in the comics a bit because Barry Allen in Crisis stayed dead for 20 plus years before they got brave enough to be like, ooh, we're going to try and bring him back. And they teased a return of Barry Allen, and I want to say in like mid-late 90s, where we find out it's actually a brainwashed Professor Zoom who thinks he's Barry. And like the fan base was really mad because Barry, as far as they knew, was turning into a bad guy until that reveal happened. But it took until, I want to say, the 2010s before they brought Barry Allen back for real after Crisis. So I agree with you. I hope that they do not bring John Wesley Shipp's character back. As much as I would love to see him on screen again, that's the right way to honor that sacrifice because the comics took a long time before they even dared do it.
Let's differentiate 2 things. Wesley Shipp as the Flash is one thing. Wesley Shipp also played other characters.
Fair.
Like Barry's dad.
So if we see John Wesley Shipp return as Henry Allen, totally on board with that. I don't necessarily want to see Earth 90, I think it was, Flash played by John Wesley Shipp again, because that acknowledges the sacrifice that was made, similar to what we saw in the Crisis comic books.
Well, so any other grievances, I'm upset about Wally and things like that. SP, are there other things you're upset about before we?
I just want to reiterate the fact that I think this whole thing would have been better off as a miniseries, as good as episodes or part 4 and 5 were. I think if you would have actually produced this all as one miniseries under one production team, it would have been a ton better and you would have had better use of characters. Like the last episode, you had Dreamer and she was in the fights, but you hardly ever saw her. She didn't speak or anything like that. I get that's going to happen. It happened in Endgame. How can you possibly give screen time to all these actors in 2.5 hours or something like that? You have the same problem here in the 5 hours that you had, or whatever 5 times 45 minutes is for this. But I think the story would have been better if you didn't have it done by the separate production teams. That said, I actually want to turn that around and give it not a grievance, but a kudos. And I don't think we talked about that too much since the crossover started. This was the first time in history you brought this many TV shows together that were connected into one crossover that lasted 5 hours. It was an amazing feat. And all the different crossovers that they did and cameos that they did along the way, the Smallville stuff, the 89 Batman stuff, you name it, the Huntress that came in, the tons of stuff that was brought in under one roof. And this was DC saying, and CW saying, hey, look, we're all connected too. And we did it right here. You might never see it again in your lifetime, but this is us showing that we care about everything you care about, including the Green Lantern little cameo at the end. And I think that was great. Now, that said, we'll go back to the grievance again, and it could have been produced a little bit better. But for a first time in history, and given the production schedules that they had and everything, okay, I can't fault it too far. I mean, we got this. This was something that I never thought I'd see in my life on the TV shows, definitely.
That's fair.
What about you, Chris? Do you have any other grievances you want to get out off your chest?
I have 2. One is smaller, and I assume they're going to correct it because just the nature of this, they don't have time to unravel what everything merging into one Earth means in part 5. We get some hints at it, but they made a point of saying that everyone on Earth, unless John Jones has gifted them with memories, remembers things differently than what the Paragons did originally, and then everyone's restored memories do. So what does it mean for the history of these shows that we've seen? We treat us like the people that have had their memories restored. We know what's happened. We don't necessarily know the history of this new Earth. So if they're cleaning things up and using this to retcon things, what does it mean for like the early seasons of Arrow? Because remember, Arrow season 1 and 2, you've got the Hood. The Hood is brutal. He's putting down criminals. He's murdering them. And we've got this nice send-off to Oliver Queen from the president in this time frame. The first superhero, the one that set the way. So I don't know what it means in this Earth. Did the Hood not act as brutally? Was there never any implication that Oliver Queen was the Hood and he was always the Green Arrow from the beginning? I don't know what it means for the early history of all of the shows before they got merged together. What gets changed and flipped around? And it also potentially has implications for the Flash, because if we've merged into an Earth Prime, then technically Harry and Jesse from Earth 2 may never have existed or wouldn't have been on that Earth 2 that we now know is Stargirl to come over here. So there's a lot of questions for what this means for the past of what we've seen. And I'm sure they're going to touch on this, and we're going to get fallout from it in future episodes as we go forward. But right now, it's a little bit of my quibble just because I want to understand what happened. And I know they couldn't do it in here, and I'm just hoping that they expand on that as we continue with these shows. That's my first quibble. Second one's a bit bigger.
That's understandable, because we were hoping for a merging and a little, course correction for some of the shows. I'm really hoping Supergirl fixes the Lena problem. But I didn't realize that they were going to elevate Oliver as much as they did. And that is a really good point. By having, I love that speech at the end. It's basically a good send-off to Oliver and the show because Arrow's ending. But him being like the hero that started it all, that's not what we had the first 3 seasons. He really didn't see himself as a hero until what? Season 6?
And even then it was come and go at times. So I'm curious how they've revised history. And it's entirely possible that we get some hints of that in the Green Arrow and the Canaries next week, because they've kind of implied via the previews and the show descriptions that it's a different Star City of 2040. So maybe we start to get some background there. And presumably in the finale, they're going to touch on a lot of things there. And we know Stephen Amell has said there's some intense fight scenes and things there. So I don't know what they're going to do. I really hope the finale isn't like a multiple flashbacks to different fights through Oliver's career and stuff. But I don't know what it's going to be. I'm curious. But my bigger quibble, though, with all of this, and there were a few other people I saw mentioning this, and then I went on the Arrow subreddit, and a lot of other people were talking about it too, especially the Flash subreddit. Go back to season 1 of The Flash, when they find the time-vaulted room with the newspaper that talks about Crisis and the implication that the Reverse Flash is involved in everything. Reverse Flash never appeared in Crisis. A character that, as far as we knew from the very beginnings of that show, had a role to play in Crisis. And I understand there's tons of other characters and stuff they had to touch on, but I really wanted, and it really seemed like Reverse Flash should have been in there. And I saw an interview that was done with Mark Guggenheim to the effect of, yeah, we didn't have time to put him in there, and we didn't necessarily want to be beholden to a writing decision that was made in season 1 for Crisis. And I kind of went, but you need to, because the implication had been for a long time that Reverse Flash plays a role in what happens to Barry and why the Flash dies when it's all said and done. And it just felt like a missed opportunity to me, especially when you've got Tom Cavanaugh there who can resume the role. And I'm sure they could have paid the money to get Matt Lesher, I think his name is, to come back and reprise his role as well. Both of whom are awesome as Eobard Thawne.
I was just going to mention, you kind of took away my joke. I was going to, well, maybe they couldn't get the actor available for Reverse Flash. Maybe he wasn't there, but he was the entire time. It was Tom Cavanaugh.
I worry I'm being too critical here, but it just seemed to me that this was, like I said, a missed opportunity, because it's been set up since the very beginning that Reverse Flash plays such a big role in the eventual death of Barry Allen.
You mentioned, yeah.
I read that interview too, and how it was like, well, Reverse Flash was part of Invasion and was part of the Earth X, punching Nazis one. And it was like he was involved with so many crossovers that perhaps we shouldn't have him involved in this one. But that is part of the Reverse Flash, is that how integral he is in a lot of DC stories. He's an important character. He is a villain on par with Lex Luthor. When you talk about DC Comics, you have Lex Luthor, you have the Reverse Flash.
You're exactly right. The Reverse Flash is to the Flash as Lex Luthor is to Superman. 100% right. And you could make the same argument in at least modern day Batman books as Joker to Batman.
So you brought up another point there. I hope they course correct with Lena Luthor. I don't think they will for a couple of reasons. It was mentioned at least twice during the crossover. It was mentioned, they had the come to whatever moment as Earth 38 was being evacuated. Also, Lex Luthor brought it up again in their fight over on the Monitor's homeworld. I just don't think they're going to let it go. I think it's going to be pervasive in the second part of the season, and it might dictate whether I continue watching it or not.
I mean, now's the perfect time to undo it, though, because remember, it's not just us that have been uncomfortable with, oh, God, more of this. You didn't trust me, so now I hate you. It was prevalent throughout Crisis, the part of Crisis she showed up on, the fan base online and things like that. So if they wanted to course correct, this is the way to do it. And then you could eventually lead to having that moment where Supergirl trusts her and reveals her identity, or the Kara that we know prior to all the reboots, her memories are there, and she goes, I know I need to make this right or I'm going to lose a friend. And it would be an interesting dynamic with Luthor's on opposing sides of each other. As it is now, she hates her brother and potentially hates Kara and the DEO, so she's kind of in the middle of everything.
I will bring this up for anybody in the production team of Supergirl that happens to be listening to this, is that I at work today, nobody knows that I do this show at work, but I was talking to people that I had no idea watched the CW shows, and they came back with me and said, one lady who now works for me, she said, yeah, my husband used to watch all these superhero shows on the CW, and the first one we stopped watching was Supergirl because we just couldn't take it anymore. That was somebody that just told me out of the blue that they're not watching Supergirl, and then like 3 other people said, yeah, I know, I stopped watching that show. By the ratings, it looks like not a lot of people stopped watching the show, but I'm telling you that people are stopping watching Supergirl specifically now because of Lena Luthor and the way that she's been treated. So you guys got to course correct that. And I know it's kind of too late to change anything right now, at least for the first few episodes. But yeah, this is one of the things that it's like Arrow. After season 2 of Arrow kind of went, and then woof, it kind of hit a low point, and we recovered from that because we got Beth Schwartz on the show and she made some recoveries and stuff like that. Not that there needs to be a change of showrunner on Supergirl again, but I just think it needs to be course corrected.
I completely agree. And this is the prime opportunity to do that if you're going to be rebooting all sorts of things.
So what did we really like? Let's go through. I know we've been hitting some of the big things that we enjoyed. I loved seeing Bebo again, and how sacred Bebo has remained. And apparently Bebo even has a TV show. So Bebo Want Cuddles is still canon and still there. SP, any highlights you want to talk about?
So the secondary characters interacting back and forth was pretty cool. You had Black Lightning with Frost, with Rebecca. We'll call Mick now Rebecca. And that was pretty fun, them going back and forth and basically introducing Black Lightning to everybody. We alluded to it at the top of the show, the Justice League moment. It was great. Them finally getting their moment, having the memorial there for Oliver, of course, but having their moment for the superheroes together, that they have a place that they can come to and now a table that they can come to, which, by the way, I tended to think it was a little bit more robust, but on the third or fourth viewing, I saw them actually sitting down and them actually pulling the chairs out, and they were just normal roller chairs, right? And the roller chairs were a little wobbly, and it's like, wow, the superheroes are actually sitting on normal chairs. I expected something like high tech, like moving on floor tracks or something like that.
It looked like one of those chairs, like the gaming chairs, for lack of a better term, they talk about for PC desks and stuff like that. I'm totally cool with that because remember, Barry Allen's a nerd and he probably played a bunch of video games and stuff. So like, these chairs are sweet. I would love to game with them, and went and got them.
And the next time we see the table, it's going to have pop-up screens in it and stuff like that. So it's going to be all cool.
Yes.
I love that too, especially when Black Lightning was just like, do we really need this? I mean, does the Earth actually have all these huge dramatic things happen? And they all look at him and he's just like, oh, really? Okay.
I was really hoping to get one of those like Legends of Tomorrow semi-break the fourth wall moments and get like Sarah Lance kind of half looking at the camera back at him and be like, about once a year.
Well, they've been talking about must be crossover time. Yeah. It's this first crossover, whatever. And even Batwoman said it right there. I was the new girl last time. So, yeah.
Chris?
I literally cheered and yelled yes when Brandon Routh's Superman appeared on screen at the end when they were showing him off, because that's Earth 98, I think it is. Or Earth
96.
96. So that I was super excited about. Bebo, they know my soft spot. If you put Bebo on there, I'm going to geek out because I love Bebo. And we talked about a lot of the other stuff. I love the fact that Sarah got to be the leader. I love the formation of the Justice League. And it's not necessarily a miss from previously, but I really wish they would have made Linda Carter the president in this future, or in this merged Earth, instead of a woman we've never met before. I just thought that would have been cool to have gotten her in. There's your final last cameo. Be like, hey, remember, she's Wonder Woman. We didn't do anything about Wonder Woman, but hey, we brought Linda Carter back.
Actually, the president was from Supergirl.
Okay.
That must have been from an earlier.
Oh, no. I can't remember what show it was, but I remember her from, maybe I'm just making it up, but I thought she was president on one of the other shows.
I don't know. And I do not know right off the top of my head. I do agree. Those were my highlights as well. A point of discussion. Let's start with you, SP. Are you going to continue to watch the other shows? You have been honest about how you would possibly drop some of them after Crisis. I'm curious. Let's start with you. Are you going to keep watching any of them?
No. I'm not. I'm going to take a break. And I've been doing this since 2012. We've had Starling Tribune on since 2012, covering the first episodes of Arrow. I need a little break from all this. And I am worried about the letdown. Of course, we're going to watch the last 2 episodes of Arrow. And then I'm going to take a break. Now, it doesn't mean that I'm going to swear off these shows forever. Like, I might actually watch Legends of Tomorrow just because I know it's campy and fun for a while. But all these shows tend to end up on some sort of streaming service afterwards. So far, it's been Netflix, but who knows what it's going to be in the future here. So it's always a possibility to get the shows like 2 weeks after they air and then catch up over the summer if I've heard great things. But I need to have a little respite and me time, and I think this is the perfect chance to take it. And I think this is a perfect high note to go out on. This Crisis on Infinite Earths has been amazing. At the end, I know we've had a lot to say about it at the beginning, and I've had a lot of criticism of it, but ultimately, I just want to get back to the point where it's just fun to watch them and just podcasting on it every week. And we're watching all the shows to stay current for the Crisis. I wasn't shy about mentioning that. I really didn't want to watch all the shows this fall, and I felt like I had to in order to get to the Crisis moment. Glad I did. Made the Crisis a little bit more sense to me, at least. I was the one who was saying, okay, this is how Black Lightning fits in and what his character is like and that sort of thing when he came on in episode, what was that, 2 or 3? But yeah, I'm not going to keep watching. I'm going to take a break, and that's just how it's going to be. I don't care if I get spoiled. Matter of fact, I hope I do get spoiled, because that'll determine whether I come back and watch the shows or not.
Chris?
So SP has a similar stance to I, but I have made no secret when we were coming into Crisis. The only shows I was current on was Arrow and Legends. And the other stuff, I would read the plot summaries or the recaps from time to time, or I'd see the buzz pop up about, oh, such and such happened. So I had passing familiarity with what was going on. But I have said before that at one point in time, it became kind of a chore keeping up. So I decided to let some of them go. So when Arrow is done, I will obviously stop Arrow because it won't exist, but I will probably watch Legends tomorrow, but not necessarily as they're airing live. I could see it being what I've done with some other shows, which is let a couple episodes queue up on the DVR, and then one afternoon I'm working on stuff in the living room, watch 2 or 3 episodes of Legends, and be like, oh man, this is really great. I love this show. It becomes difficult now that they've merged Earth Prime to have all of these shows when I wasn't watching them because I started to get burned out. I am kind of worried about how hard it's going to be to keep up on events as they're taking place. And I guess that's partly what the internet's for. I can read what's going on. People can talk about it. And I'll be honest, I'll probably, if I hear good things, I get HBO Max for free when it comes out via my cell phone provider, which is where they're eventually moving all of these things to. I know I can catch up with them there, but I'm kind of looking forward to a little bit of a break from it and just watching it on my own schedule or when I have time on it. Because I love doing this show with you guys and all of that, but sometimes, especially certain seasons of Arrow, it was very much a chore to power through those episodes. Be like, oh God, I don't really want to watch this, but we got a podcast about it tomorrow.
I have to admit, I stopped watching Black Lightning after, I can't remember if it was episode 2 or 3, where one of the characters to me just acted rudely out of character for no reason whatsoever. I have been current on the others. I've enjoyed Flash. I'm going to probably still watch Flash. I really hope Supergirl improves. I've tried to be a champion of Supergirl for the past year. It's been tough for me, especially what they've done to Lena this year and how just spiteful and shallow and one-dimensional they've made her, especially after last season and such. I don't know. I'll definitely watch Flash, and I'm going to watch Legends of Tomorrow. I mean, come on, that's an amazing show.
Well said. I agree.
Black Lightning, I don't know. It depends on if they do this Occupation of Freeland. If that continues, I might not watch this season, and then I might pick it up on season 3, like read a recap or something, because I do not like the Occupation storyline. It just doesn't resonate with me. And then otherwise, yeah, Supergirl for me is the one that's on the bubble. I hate saying that. I don't know if I'm going to watch the Superman one. That it depends. I'm not sure if I want to watch the Canary ones or the Stargirl ones. I'm unsure about those. It depends on what other things. I know there's some other things I'm ending, but there's other projects and things I'm getting into. And it just becomes like, what is worth my time? And if you don't watch something for a couple of weeks and you realize you don't miss it, you're just like, oh my gosh, that was on, really? Then you realize that you aren't a fan anymore and it's not something that you look forward to watching.
See, having this connected universe like this, you can get away with it with the Marvel movies. It's a little bit easier because you're saying, I need to dedicate 3 hours every 6 months to go to the movie theater. Versus right now, if you wanted to watch all of the shows that are on right now, you're talking 4 or 5 hours of television time per week to know everything that's going on. And that's awesome if you have the time for that. It's just, I kind of look at it and go, I kind of have other things I'd like to do right now. Some of these aren't interesting me as much, and I'll probably come back to others later on, but it's a big time commitment week to week. And that's always been my concern. The more they expand and the more they start doing, that it would become harder and harder to keep up with that. Now that they've consolidated everyone to one Earth effectively, except for Stargirl, there's a lot you got to watch if you want to know what the current state of events is for Earth Prime. It's tough. It's daunting. It almost gives me anxiety as I'm sitting here thinking about, oh my God, here's all the stuff I would have to watch. And so I can understand why some people might be apprehensive about it. So I don't think there's anything wrong, like we're saying on here, of, yeah, I'm going to take a break from this one and I'll watch Legends and I can go back and watch the other shows later if it sounds like it's interesting. That's not an insult to the product, anything like that. It's more just, I don't know that I can make that commitment anymore.
I agree wholeheartedly. I want to say a few things, though, as much as the three of us are winding down. These shows are a great gateway drug to geekdom, niche genre television. And it's something we didn't have when we were growing up. How would you have liked to have had this universe available to you when you were growing up? It would have been great. The other thing I will say is that same generation of people that is just discovering shows like this, they have it available free to them on the CW app here in the United States. And that is amazing in this day and age of mobile phones and people cutting the cord and college students not having access to the same cable TV that we might have had, or need time delayed or time shifted viewing or something like that. And I want to point out that you can pick and choose which ones that you do want to watch. You don't have to watch everything. Yes, if they do a crossover, it makes sense of what is going on across the universe and what's going on with different characters. Like, let's just pretend you weren't watching Flash. You'd be like, what do you mean Cisco's not Vibe anymore? He was Vibe the last time he showed up. Why is he not Vibe? Those sorts of questions would come up. Or who's the elongated man? What? And why did he only get like 2 seconds of screen time? Stuff like that. You have to ask yourself. But in the meantime, it's a great place to start. It's like comic books. What's the best way to start with comic books? You're never going to go to issue number 1 and read from number 1 on. I have a co-host over on Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. along with Michelle. Her name is Haley, and she tried to do the Marvel read forward, basically from, I think it was the Fantastic Four on forward. And she had to stop because, well, life got in the way, and she stopped. This is the same way as comic books, where you can pick up wherever. With comic books, you can go to the comic book store in any given week. You can pick up an issue that you like, and you can start following from there. These shows are kind of the same way. So as much as we're saying we need a break, or there's certain shows that we're not going to watch or something like that, I just want to say to our audience that, yes, this is a great time for these shows. And if these shows do it for you, they are available for you. Watch them, because if you don't watch them at some point in time, they're going to get canceled. So continue to support them and watch them in however fashion you do it. If you watch it live, which is always best, or if you watch it time delayed in the CW app. I don't care how you watch it. If you like it, you go ahead and watch it.
And I definitely will still be watching Batwoman, because I love Batwoman. I love that shot of Kate, Alex, and Kara in Kara's apartment, them just, watching this TV. I am not shipping Kate and Alex. I would like for them to be friends and hang out. The whole we have one lesbian over here and one lesbian over here, and they have to be the ones that hook up. No, there are other lesbians in the world, including in the CW universe, so they don't have to be together. So I am not shipping Alex and Kate. I really hope a lot of other people do not do that. But I loved it. One of my other favorite moments was during the fight with Bebo, and Kate comes, there's Batwoman, and here's Supergirl realizing this is a very serious moment, actually going, oh my God, Kate's here. We have that world's finest friendship going on. That is something more that I really would like to see. And that's one of my favorite parts of the crossover, was their relationship. So
you want to see more covers blown like that?
Yeah, right. That's the first thing I thought. I was like, no, secret identity.
You're on the middle of the street. You called her Kate. Come on.
Well, people were screaming and running away, so they might not have heard it.
Yeah,
you never know when a camera's on you.
Oh, but it was still cute.
Okay. I want to go back to that scene too. By the way, at the very end, it was really unusual. I didn't really think we'd get the three of them together in Kara's apartment. And we did. It seemed like an unusual pairing to me, but I was like, okay, I'll run with it. This is fine. I kind of like the three of them being able to hang out whenever they want to. Totally not in their characters, and not to hang out, but like Kate's from Gotham. Gotham is a very different place than National City on any Earth. So it was just kind of odd for them to hang out, and it was wonderful all at the same time.
I wonder how close Gotham is to National City in this new Earth. Granted, Kara can fly super fast. So it's not like it's a problem. Like, hey, want to come hang out? Whoop, let me go get you.
Well, not that it's anything like the Justice League EU, but Gotham was right next to Metropolis, right?
Right. It was.
National City, who knows?
I always assumed National City was on the West Coast, but that just was an assumption. I don't know where it came from.
Who knows anymore? You got an entirely different Earth.
Yeah, who knows? Any last thoughts before we move on? SP?
I want to thank both of you for podcasting in this crisis with me. And it was really fun. You guys made it tolerable, enjoyable. We were able to dissect pretty much each episode separately, although we did take the last two at the same time just because we want to stay current for the Arrow finale. And you guys made it fun. And talking to our network owner, Steven, also was pretty cool. We've invited him to come on the show. He keeps on pushing us off because, well, he doesn't like you, Chris. I'm sorry to mention that, but he doesn't. So he doesn't want to be on another show with you. Anyway, so
I don't
thank
like
you.
people in Twitter jail either.
So thank you very much, guys, for making this tolerable, for making it more enjoyable. Like, I was watching the last two episodes knowing I was in 2 days going to be talking to you guys, and I was just sitting down and enjoying it. Like I said, it was going to in December. I turned all the lights down. I had the big stereo going on. It was on the main TV, and I just enjoyed it for 2 hours. It was a fun viewing experience. And I don't know if I'm ever going to see the like again. Five episodes of what, 6 or 7 shows that crossed over. This is amazing.
Yep.
Chris, any last thoughts?
Hell of a ride we had for this. I'm curious to see what they can do next year for their crossover to even try and come close to upping the bar again.
Yes, it was just amazing seeing something. We had Arrow start 8 years ago and how it was able to spawn Flash. And then we got so many superhero shows. Yes, it has become like a buffet and kind of overwhelming. But in reality, we got a lot of geek stuff going on. And I'm really happy that this generation, the generations, younger than me, who are coming up, who actually get to have this. Like SP said, I would have loved this as a kid. I mean, I had the Wonder Woman TV show, the Incredible Hulk TV show, the Flash show. Like, that was really it. Now you've got all of these, and I'm really happy for everyone who gets to watch these and consume these and all that type of stuff. And also thank you for our listeners for sticking on this long. We are having a longer one because we are doing 2 episodes in once. But next week, we're going to only be talking about 1 episode, and that's going to be Green Arrow and the Canaries. That's Arrow Season 8, Episode 9. It will air Tuesday, January 21st, 2020. In the year 2040, Mia Queen has everything she could ever wanted until Laurel and Dinah suddenly show up in her life again, and things take a shocking turn. Laurel and Dinah track a kidnapping victim who has direct ties to Mia. This episode was directed by James Banford, and because it is a backdoor pilot, it has a lot of writers, including Beth Schwartz, Mark Guggenheim, Joe Blankenship, and Oscar Balderrama.
I am, for one, wondering when we'll get that final Felicity Smoke scene.
Finale, they said, I think. In fact, in the text preview they put out for the summary was Felicity. Emily Bett Rickards returns as Felicity as part of what they put out in the episode description.
Okay, well, I'll look forward to that. And this is the penultimate Arrow episode, not of the season, of the series. The penultimate Arrow episode coming up next week.
I like I mentioned earlier in the show, I'm kind of ambivalent on this when I want more resolution as to what happened out of Crisis. Instead, we're going to 2040 to do a spinoff. Maybe there'll be more resolution to what's happened here. We'll find out more of what all's going on, but it feels jarring to me. I hope to be proven wrong.
Aren't you excited to see the adult Sarah Diggle?
Yeah.
She's not in the episode. I'm just sorry. I'm going to spoil that for you. I'm really sorry, but she is not. I already know that for a fact.
Oh, well.
That being said, though, we don't have any news for you because it's all about Crisis this week. We're just crisising everything. So it is time for us to start wrapping this thing up. So a big thank you to our live listeners / viewers over in the chat room at geeks.live. But also a thank you to everyone who downloads the podcast, StarlingTribune.com, or catches the video replays over at YouTube.com/GonnaGeek.
If you want to talk to us about Crisis, the ending of Arrow, or our opinions on the rest of the Arrowverse, you can always catch us on our Discord server at GonnaGeek.com/Discord. Go to the Starling Tribune channel. And remember, you can catch us for the next 2 weeks as we record at www.geeks.live at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 4:30 p.m. Pacific on Thursdays.
We would love to hear from you. We're the Starling Tribune on Facebook and Instagram, at Starling Tribune on Twitter, and you can call us at 612-888-CAVE. That's 612-888-2283. Well, this brings us to the end of another great episode. Any last words before we sign off? At Stargate Pioneer.
Hashtag Age of Heroes.
At the Chris Farrell.
Hashtag I'm in Twitter jail, Hoss.
And I am at Michelle Ely, signing off with hashtag for Oliver. Oracle, I think we're done here.
This was the Starling Tribune. You can leave us feedback at gonnageek.com or check out our archive at starlingtribune.com. Visit gonnageek.com for more podcasts. Music by Kevin MacLeod can be found at incompetech.com. This podcast is not produced or maintained by the CW, Warner Brothers Television, CTV, or DC Comics. All characters, stories, and situations are the property of Time Warner. No infringement is intended. We will see you for the next episode of CW's Arrow.